Oh man, I'm so glad we're finally to the good games.
Finally.
Jeez, this is
Don't watch the other 2 videos. Please watch the 2 videos. We need that. But
share them, please.
But then we'll talk extra good about these games.
Snick and Mike's top 100 games. But does anyone care what they have to say? I know I don't. 'Cause they may dab, they might scream, they may say some things that are plain wrong. Dab on it, dab on it. But they are dumb bing bongs. My teacher's better.
What's up, everybody? I'm Mike.
I'm Nick.
We are the Brothers Murph, and it's time to continue the top 100 games of all time, objectively by us.
80 to 71. Super excited. This top 100, we are partnering with Tabletop Alliance. If you haven't watched the other ones, this is a really good nonprofit where they accept game donations that they then put into schools. They work with teachers. They also accept monetary donations. Please donate over there if you have a couple extra bucks. A little less than $1, like 90 cents or so, helps one kid. So if you can give like $10, that's 10 kids you help. We're trying to help 2,000 kids at least.
So if you can see right over here, whatever number of money that's at,
that's how many kids we've helped.
I don't know, $50,000.
Oh, at least.
That's how many kids we've helped.
Indeed. There'll be a card up here. We have a video explaining more in depth about Tabletop Alliance. Please watch that if you're more interested in helping out. It's really cool. But nonetheless, Mikey, we're at 80 to 71. We're getting into the good games, not the trash games. And so, gosh, let's get right into it, huh?
Let's do it.
My number 80 is a party game, and I'll never apologize for having party games on my list, especially this high.
Yeah, you should.
And this is So Clover. This is a game kind of in the vein of like the Just Ones, the cooperative party games. I think it's a cool
word-based.
Yeah. So basically, this is a game where everyone has a little 4-leaf clover, a little dry erase 4-leaf clover, and you're going to be given 4 random cards. These cards are square, and they're going to have 4 different clues on them, and you're going to randomly shuffle them up and put them in your clover. And so each part of your 4-leaf clover will have 2 words next to it, and then you have to write a clue that corresponds to those 2 words. But those 2 words are random. It could be like park and tuba, and you're like, well, I don't know what to do to make people try and think of those 2 words.
Football?
So yeah, right? You're like, hey, yeah, grass football, that's probably fine. But nonetheless, so then you're going to write a clue for each of these 4 pairings, and then you're going to take off those clues, take off the cards, and you're going to add a 5th one. And then once everyone's done with that, you then one by one will be like, okay, here's my clover, here's the 5 cards, and they have to try and reassemble it. Reassemble it correctly. But again, now there's also a 5th card that just throws stuff in the loop.
Because sometimes like one of those words will be the perfect match. And you're like, oh no, pigskin. You're like, why?
Right, exactly. Classic.
Football, I'm going for park and tuba.
But nonetheless, it's like that's how the game goes. And so they have to reassemble it, which sounds impossible, but it actually does work.
It's amazing that it happens.
But it's so much fun because you just have to like think so hard like how do I do this? And it's just like this such an interesting, and then it's really fun to try to construct them again because you're just like, maybe it's turned this way because this can kind of correspond to this. It doesn't really work, but this one's really on the nose. So maybe this one, because sometimes you're like, I don't have anything for both of these, so I'm gonna put a clue for one of them and just hope that it works out.
Yeah.
And it's really fun. And then basically they officially guess, and then if something's wrong, you're gonna take off the ones that are wrong. And then they have one more chance to try to get it right. You get a certain amount of points for doing it. Who cares about the points? It's just fun. Yeah. But So Clover is so freaking fun. From the moment we played it at BGG-Con last year, and from the moment we played it, I was immediately like, wow, that is one of the best party games I've ever played. It just works so well. I love to play it. I love So Clover. It's my number 80. It's so good.
It's so fantastic. My number 80 is a game that came into our lives recently, and it's such a fun card game that will stick around forever. It's super portable. It's Scout.
Oh, yeah.
Scout is like, man, we played it with lots of different people.
You play Scout all the time.
A lot of people. It goes over huge every time. It's such a fun hand management card playing game.
Yeah.
Now, the whole gimmick of it is that you have all these cards that have 2 different numbers on the different sides.
Yes.
They're these kind of double-ended cards. And when you get your hand of cards, whatever order those cards were dealt to you in, they must remain in that order. You can't rearrange your hand.
Nope.
One thing you can do is you can flip your hand entirely over, which might give you a slightly better situation. And the type of situation you want to see are either high cards or, in general, cards that go in a run, either ascending or descending is totally fine, but 5, 4, 3, for example, or sets of cards. So 3 10s would be very powerful. For example, 10 is the highest number. And then when you get to playing, it's really simple. You can scout or show. If you're going to show, you're going to put down a card on the table. Now, the rules is you have to play something that is more valuable than what was placed before it on the table.
So if I put down a 3.
You put down a 3, I have to play either a higher card, a single higher card, so 4 or higher would work. Or if Nick put down a 10, well, I can't play an 11, that doesn't exist, so I need to play more cards. That means I can either play like a 1 or a 2. If I'm playing more cards, even if those cards are so low, a 1 and 2, it beats fewer cards. One single card will always be beat by 2 cards. Does not matter the values. So I put down a 1 and 2, and I get to collect the card that was before me, and that's now a victory point for me. So now 1 and 2 is on the table. Now the next player either has to play a 2 and a 3, or a 1, 2, 3 would be fine, or whatever. Or they could play a set of cards, which is always more powerful than a run. So if there's a 1 and 2, or say, for example, an 8 and a 9 on the table, I could play a 1 and a 1. 2 cards in a set is more powerful than any 2 cards in a run, so I get to then place that down and collect. But say I can't actually beat the set. What I'm going to do is scout. I'm going to look at those cards that are in front of me, and I'm going to take one of the cards that's on the ends. And I can then take it by giving you a victory point. And then I get to add that card to my hand. I can add it anywhere in my hand, and either end can be face up. So that's how you get to start to repair the horribleness of your hand, because you might have like 4, and then 6, and then 8, 9, 10, and you're like, if I can get a 5 here and a 7 here, then I've got like a super hand. And so it's really about trying to construct that hand, but you can't just do it willy-nilly by shifting stuff around in your hand. So when to choose a scout, when to choose a show. You can do a scout and show in one once per round, and you're just trying to have the most points in a round. And
it's so good.
It's just so fun.
And the hand management is super interesting because it's like so much of it is about trying to get stuff in your hand together. So if I have like, cards I have like 8, 8, 4, 8. If I can play that 4, now all 3 of my 8s are together, and this is way more powerful. So much of it is like,
good at
okay, can I essentially kind of, it's not trick taking, but can I throw off this card at some point? Which one gets it out of my head? You're trying to get rid of your cards. And like, if I can, then I can make this way more powerful. So much of it is like, okay, can I strategically get stuff in my hand together and then scout strategically? It's like, oh, okay, now my 8s are together. Ooh, there's an 8. I can technically beat this, but instead I'm going to scout and take another 8 and boom, and now I've got 4 8s, which is really strong. And so there's so much more strategy than it seems at first. Scout's really good.
It's really good. Like the way you can do that kind of stuff, you can be very smart and tricksy with it. Or you can play it super casually or anywhere in between. Scout's just really fantastic, and that's why it's on my list.
Yeah, it's really good. All right, that's our number 80s. Let's get number 79.
Number 79, Nick, this is the game that introduced the concept of card drafting to me. This is Seasons.
Oh, wow.
This is the first game that I can recall doing card drafting.
I was like, 7 what is it? That's right. Yeah, that is the first one.
So Seasons is a game where you are, we're kind of doing like a magical tournament is the loose theme, but it's just set in a very kind of like fantastical world of like the same animals and
Lords
creatures.
of Zidit is set in the same universe.
So it's a really fun kind of world to inhabit. And what we're going to do is we're going to draft out a bunch of cards first, and then we're going to play through kind of like 3 years. And we are going to be drafting dice. We're going to roll out these dice depending on what season we're in. Say we start off in spring.
Mike, how chunk are the dice?
They're dumb chunk, maximum chunk level. They're like, I swear to God,
some
this
dumb
big.
chunks down in the comments,
Some
please.
dumb chunks. They're so
big for no reason.
and wonderful to roll. They are just very satisfying to roll. And now we have the Geek Up bits, so the bits are the same kind of material. It's just a very satisfying game. So these dice are going to get rolled out, and they're going to produce like resources for you. In spring, like Earth is the most prominent, and then fire doesn't exist at all because we're about to go into summer, and summer is fire season. Or if you're in California, all seasons are fire season.
Yeah, it's true.
And you're going to then draft dice, and you're going to get to produce those resources and put them along the top of your board. You can only hold so many of these elements at once. And then whatever die is left over is going to propel us forward in time, which might push us into the summer season or fall or winter, and around we go. And then you're going to try to use those elements to ultimately play cards out. That's really the kind of main thing we're doing here is you've drafted out this hand of cards, hopefully that have some synergy to them. And then you're trying to play out those cards, which are going to give you familiars, which give you like little powers every turn.
There's a lot of cards.
There's like one-time benefits. There's tappable things, endgame scoring things, a whole bunch of stuff that gives you these kind of crystals, which are points. And so it's really about getting the right elements, and then either transmuting those for straight up points or getting them to play and fuel this kind of card engine you have. And it's just one that like is always really fun. It's always more fun than I even remember. And we've had this game for a long time. A long time. The production value, those chunky dice and stuff,
It's
have a
still
lot of
so
staying
good.
power.
It's so good.
And then the way that the card play and stuff is really interesting, and it's so fun to get this hand of cards and draft it out and really try to curate something. They're like, okay, I have a blueprint for my success. I'm going to play this card, then this card, and we're going to go into this, and it's just very fun to execute.
As you said, it's like whatever die is left over propels the season forward, or propels the year
And it might
forward.
go quite a
and
ways.
you might really need it to slow down, or you might be like, oh no, I'm trying to push the end, and so I'm going to leave the die there that will move forward like 3, which is guaranteed to go in the next season. Yeah. It's very, very interesting and tactical. Seasons is really
good. Once 3 years are done, we're over. So the way you can manipulate time and stretch the game out or speed it up is a viable piece of your strategy.
Yeah, it's good.
It's really fun. Season's great.
That's number 79?
Number 79.
All right, my number 79 is probably the greatest game ever made, even though it's only my number 79, and that is Crokinole.
Oh, yeah.
Finally.
Okay. Objectively best game of all time.
Yes.
But
Subjectively,
to keep
it's my number
Crokinole
79.
humble.
Yes, it's my number 79 because it is
Crokinole is
just
ridiculous.
so good.
It's in the top 100 of all time for everybody.
It is indeed.
For a reason.
Crokinole is a dexterity game where you are
Pure dexterity.
Yeah, flicking discs on a big round board, and you're flicking discs, and you are trying to get your discs in the middle of the board if you can, and essentially kind of like shuffleboard rules where you're smacking each other's discs, trying to get stuff out of the way, and then it's kind of like cancellation scoring. So like if both Mike and I have a disc in the middle ring, those are going to cancel each other out, and then basically whoever has points at the end of all the cancellations will score that many points. So if Mike has 40 points, I have 45 points, I will end up scoring 5 points essentially. Yep. And it's a game where you're just flicking these discs and careening off each other, trying to get in the middle, which will give you an automatic 20 points and all this kind of stuff. And it's just fun. It's just one of the funnest games ever. We finally got a Crokinole board. We got it at Gen Con, which was like wild.
Because our friend won a tournament because they're like actually skilled at these things. He's like, hey, do you want this? I already have a Crokinole board. We're like, I've always wanted one. Yes,
so we had to like bring that home. It was fun. It was fun to check that.
The Indianapolis airport people were doing a lot of like, what do I do with this?
They put it on the belt. They put your bags on the belt to go in, and they couldn't get. So they're like trying to like get it through this little door, and they had to like take it around. But they were they were
like, I can't guarantee that this will not be sawed in half.
Yeah, it was very funny. But nonetheless, Crokinole is so good. It's just one of the greatest. We recently check it out. It was a fun video. We recently put it on top of a Lazy Susan, like an automatic Lazy Susan. So we played like spinning Crokinole. It was bonkers.
It's really hard.
It was bananas. Crokinole is. It's the greatest game ever made.
Agreed.
It's 79.
Agreed.
That's my number 79. Let's get a 78. Number 78, especially now that there is a newer version that is significantly easier to play, my number 78 is Carpe Diem. Carpe Diem was...
There are some quality of life upgrades in that one.
My gosh. This is a Stefan Feld game that I honestly think is brilliant. I think it's an incredible game.
Simple?
That the original... It is pretty simple,
in terms of what you're doing, it's hard to score points, but it's easy to understand what you do.
But the original printing of this game was near unplayable because of the similarities in colors. It looked really, really bad. It's one of those things where I'm like, who greenlit this? Like, who said, yep, that's how we want it to look? Like, I just don't get it. Like, I just don't get it. But they redid it. It's still very, very
it's very
mushy green and brown and stuff like that. But it looks better. And my thing is like,
it's much more functional than it was before.
It's much
still
more
function over like. Yes. Fancy, but yeah.
But this is a Stefan Feld game where you are drafting these little square tiles on this kind of little drafting board, and you're putting it in your like little estate or whatever, Stefan Feld stuff. And you're essentially on these tiles are going to be different kinds of buildings or different kinds of like essentially farmlands, and you're essentially trying to make big one. So this little bit have a little cap end of like a vineyard and then the back end of like a gold building. And then you can get other vineyard parts to make that vineyard out. And then once you cap it on the other side, then however many spots that vineyard is, you're going to get grapes for that, right? And then there's a bunch of these little buildings, and once you finish those buildings, they'll give you like a little thing you get to do. You can make them like bread. You're getting like other tiles, Euro stuff, Stefan Feld stuff. There's no theme at all. No. And then you're essentially taking these resources, and at the end of the round, once we've drafted all the tiles we can draft, you then will have to score. And the scoring is really, really interesting because there's this area where there's all these cards, but all these random scoring cards. There's a whole bunch of them. And essentially what you're going to do is you're going to have to score 2 of them every round. Yep. And you're going to put your disc in between 2 of those cards. And you're saying, I'm scoring this one and I'm scoring this one. Then you usually have to turn in the resources to score them, or you might need something specific on your board.
You have something built on your board, yeah.
Exactly. And you can score the cards multiple times. So if the thing calls for like 3 grapes, but you have 12 grapes, you can turn in 12 and score it 4 times you want to. It's very difficult to do something like that, but you technically can. but it's
In
really
theory.
hard to find a spot that you can score both of them. And then once that spot is gone, it's gone. So
For everybody. No one else can claim it. It's like almost like an area control to the
it's kind of
scoring.
this weird area control game where you're like, okay, I'm going to put this one here because I know I can score this now, and I know Mike's got a ton of bread that he can turn in for this one, so I'm going to do that. And it's very, very difficult to score, but it's really interesting. It's just absolutely fascinating. And again, the new version now is like much, much easier to see. It's much, much easier to play because it was nigh unplayable before because it was the graphic design and it was so poorly done.
Yeah.
But the new one is honestly great. It's still very like mushy green and brown.
Again, it's purely functional.
Yes.
But it is more functional than it was.
Yes, it is.
I wouldn't even say it's perfect yet, but like it's much more clear. In the original, they had, and it's important that certain backs of cards are dark green, which are only for the last round.
Yes.
And they were dark green and pretty dark green for the rest, and you could not tell them apart unless you're in light. Now they are literally white and black.
Yes.
That's very clear to tell.
Yeah, it's very
Thank you
clear.
for making that change.
Yeah, so it's great. I really like Carpe Diem. It was one of those games where I was like, I want to like this more, but it's so poorly executed in terms of like the production value and stuff like that it made the game worse.
It was difficult to play.
And now I'm like, okay, now I can just enjoy the mechanics because the game itself is functional.
And the mechanics are great.
The mechanics are incredible. And so I really like Carpe Diem. It's in my top 100. I still really, really enjoy it. But it's now playable, which is great. It's my 78.
Preferably you can play the games you like. My number 78 is King Domino. I'm lumping King Domino, Queen Domino, King Domino Origins, which is what I'll kind of speak specifically on.
King Domino Origins is the best one at this point.
It is. King Domino Origins is our favorite version. King Domino is a game that we were excited for. We got it right away in 2016 when it came out. We were high up on Bruno Catala at the time.
Yeah.
Still like Bruno Catala. Nothing's changed there, but like King Domino is one I was so excited for because you have these kind of simple mechanisms, and King Domino Origins still does this well, but gives you a little bit of ways you can kind of scale the game up or down depending on who you're playing with, which I think is brilliant to do. So in King Domino Origins, you have your little chiefdom or whatever, your little starting tile, which is a little wild tile. So anything can be touching that wild tile.
Yep.
And once you place, you're going to be drafting out these domino shaped pieces, which will have one or possibly two landscapes on them. And the rules are simple. First of all, you have a 5x5 or in a 2-player game, a 7x7 grid you have to build within. You cannot just build one big straight long line. That'd be insane. You have to build a nice kind of contained chiefdom. And you have to match tiles. So if I'm not touching my center wild tile, and I have like water over here, I need to touch at least one half of my new domino has to match something that is touching. It doesn't have to be a perfect match, but if I have like water touching water, we're good to go.
Yeah.
And what you're trying to do is build in such a way that you ultimately have large swaths of land that are all the same landscape. And then in this one, you have these volcanoes, which are going to be spewing out kind of fire, and fire equals comfort in the game and equals
warmth.
safety
It's
and warmth. And that is going to be a multiplier on your landscapes. So if I have a big thing that I have like, let's say 8 pieces of water, 8 little squares of water. If I have no fire within that, I have 0 points.
But if I have times 0.
Exactly. But if I have 3, now it's going to be 8 times 3. I have 24 points. So you're really trying to build big areas of land, pump as much of that kind of the comfort factor into those areas of land to maximize your score.
Yeah.
King Domino Origins for us gets the vote because you have that kind of base version, which is very kind of classic King Domino with a little bit of change because the fire actually spews out of the volcanoes and you can choose where it goes versus them being pre-printed, which is really cool. And then there's a kind of a middle version where there's these resources you can gain every time you place these tiles out and stuff, which are kind of set collection. And then in the ultimate kind of version, you can spend those resources to get these special tiles to put on top of tiles and kind of mitigate scoring, kind of Queen Domino.
Yeah.
Things we really like about this is I like having a specific grid to work within.
Yeah.
I like the simplicity of like, if you match something, you can place it. And then the drafting, because the cards are, the tiles are all numbered 1 through 48.
Yes.
The 1 is less powerful than the 48.
Fair.
And as you're drawing out random tiles and stuff like that, you're going to order them in order from low number to high. And then you're going to, whoever gets the lowest, kind of weakest tile gets to place their tile first and then choose for the next turn which tile. So you have a lesser tile now, but more selection later. Versus the last player gets the most powerful tile, but they just get whatever's left over. You get no choice in what you take next. So do I balance like flexibility Or do I take what I have the most powerful thing possible now, knowing that I might get a subpar tile that maybe even I can't place legally next turn? That's brilliant. King Domino and King Domino Origins now. So good. Classic game. You can play with anybody. I love it. And King Domino Origins is the definitive way to go.
Yeah, for sure. It's King Domino won Spills Jars for a reason. It's incredible.
It's great.
All right, that's our 78s. Let's get number 77.
My number 77 is Horrified American Monsters. I got a lot of slashers. A lot of
well, there's a lot of those kind of sequels, right? It's mostly the same game.
Systems of games. So Horrified is a cooperative pick up and deliver game ultimately, because there's all these tiles on the board, and Horrified American Monsters is one we really enjoy because it's cryptids and Bigfoot and stuff. And we really enjoy the monsters themselves. Present really fun puzzles. The Jersey Devil in particular is really fun.
Really interesting.
So in this game, you are different people who all have a little bit of a power. It's kind of very pandemic-y in that you're going to have a little bit of a power that's different than anybody else. You're going to have action points per turn. You can use those action points to move from location to location. If you're at a location that has one or more tiles, you can pick up all the tiles, which are going to be different items. And basically what it comes down to is they'll have a value in terms of a number and a color to them. And you are trying to solve the puzzle of whatever monster or monsters you're facing off against. So again, in American monsters, you're going to have maybe like Mothman, the Jersey Devil, and Bigfoot. They all function a little bit differently. They're all going to be kind of attacking the people and raising the terror level, which is a way that you can lose. And a lot of stuff comes down to you need to get certain types of tiles to a certain location to kind of progress the mystery. You're trying to unfold the mystery of a certain monster. Once you get kind of done with phase one, you can then usually go face down that monster, kind of shoo them away back to the wilderness, away from the town that they're terrorizing currently.
Fair.
So it's pick them, deliver, because usually you have to get tiles from a certain place and take them to a certain place and drop them off and use them. It's really fun because the first one in particular was like a super smart move because it's a universal movie monsters. You got the classics of like the Creature from the Black Lagoon and Frankenstein and the Bride and the Wolfman and the Mummy and Dracula and stuff. Those are awesome. We all remember those movies. Even if you haven't seen them, they're just part of the zeitgeist.
Yeah, you just know of them, right?
And it's super cool. We played that one with a lot of people. Our sister actually got it for us, and I was just like, oh yeah, I'm sure this will be cool. And we played it like, oh, this is a really fun game.
It's really fun.
On top of being kind of cool because it's about movie monsters and stuff. And then American Monsters just takes it further with the cryptids.
Yeah, and I really hope they keep going down this line. I mean,
either worldly, go to different regions and what are their...
Keep going down cryptids or just like have anything else. I mean, really, like they really switched up between the two, and I'm like, I just keep making more horrifying. I think it's really cool.
Just mysterious stuff.
Yeah, I think it's outstanding.
It's a really fun game. You get to work together, so it's a great one to introduce to people. The mechanisms of what you can do on a turn are simple and easy. And then there's a lot of kind of fun fanfare with like, people love cryptids, people love movie monsters.
True.
It's just got a lot of win all over the place. Horrified's my number 77.
All right, my number 77 is Viscounts of the West Kingdom. This is one of This is one of the West Kingdom's games. It's not the lowest of the West Kingdom games. One did not make my list. Paladins did not make my list.
Oh, it's fine. Doesn't matter. It's your
Sorry,
list.
buddy. I like Paladins. I don't like it as much as the other ones. And I don't like it as much as everyone else. But I do like Paladins a lot. But Viscounts of the West Kingdom was the third of the West Kingdom games by Shem Phillips and Garfield Games. And this one is interesting because people always complain the West Kingdom games, even though all three West Kingdom games are not even remotely similar. They are, with the exception of the fact they all are done by the same artist and there's some graphic design stuff that's similar, they are not different. And that's what Viscounts of West Kingdom particularly, you're like, wow, this is a totally different game. Because you have your big Viscount who's on a big old horse.
They're thematically linked.
Yes, and that's literally it.
Yeah.
And your Viscount, you're going around this rondel, you're going around the board, and depending on where you land, you kind of are doing different stuff. And then on top of that, you're also building out, you're building out your tableau of cards, but you're kind of cycling through your cards. Slowly. And you're just trying to get points in a whole bunch of different ways. As lots of Garfield games where it's like, you can do a whole bunch of different stuff. And I feel like even more so, there's like, because you look at like Wayfarers of the South Tigris, and it's like...
Wayfarers said, hold my beer to the entire West Kingdom.
Yeah, it's like, choose how you want to make points. And that's kind of like Viscounts too, where you can put out these buildings, you're getting different kind of cards. And it's one of those things where like, this is like, the West Kingdom series particularly was just like, they came out with Architects, it was great, which is my favorite of the three. And then Paladins, people were like, holy crap. And then Viscounts, people were like, holy crap. And it's just like, they just keep building on top of each other. But the Rondell of it, and there's like a castle in the center that you can kind of put your people in the castle, and there's like this weird kind of like way where you can like kind of like shoot up to the top of the castle and stuff. And there's just so many different things to think about. You have these scrolls you can get. You're trying to like do kind of set collection over there. Again, it's one of those things where it's like you can do a lot of different stuff. And one thing I like about Viscounts is pretty much every single time I play, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna try this. Yeah. I'm gonna get out all my buildings and maybe do a little bit of scrolls. I'm gonna go super heavy into the castle, and then that's pretty much it. You can kind of just try different stuff with it, and it's just so good. And I really, really like the rondelle. I just think
the moving around the board is really cool.
It's super because you're moving from the inside of the board to the outside of the board while you're moving through, and how that works. You're like, darn, I can't quite get there. So where can I go to kind of do what I need to do? And it just works really, really well. I really like Viscounts of the West Kingdom. I think it's outstanding. It'll be higher on Mike's list. But nonetheless, Viscounts of the West Kingdom is really, really good. The West Kingdom series as a whole is dumb good.
One of the better, just the fact that like there's not that many like board game trilogies
Paladins,
and stuff.
Paladins didn't make my list.
That's fair.
But I still really, really enjoy it. And so, yeah, that is my number 77, I believe, and that is Viscounts of the West Kingdom. My number 76 is of the same scale as Viscounts of the West Kingdom. This is Abandon All Artichokes. Same game, basically.
That's a solid joke.
That's what I love about Top 100. And one thing I like about our particular taste is we like bigger games like Viscounts, which is not the biggest game ever, but it's a decently heavy game. And then Abandon All Artichokes, which is a silly game about getting rid of artichokes. And it's great.
They both produce tons of fun.
Abandon All Artichokes is just so much fun. It's a deck wrecking game where it's a deck building game, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to get rid of cards in your hand. There are artichokes and everyone hates artichokes. It's not true. Artichokes are great. But you're trying to get rid of artichokes. You start off with 10. At the end of your turn, what you do is you draw back up to 5 cards. If you draw back at 5 cards and you didn't draw any artichokes,
congrats.
You won the game. Now again, at the beginning of the game, you start off with 10 and nothing else. So there's no way to do that at the very beginning of the game. But essentially,
unlikely.
Exactly. So what you're doing is there's a garden row. There's all these different kinds of vegetables like carrots and a really cool looking broccoli, and they will do different stuff. They a lot of times allow you to get rid of cards. You can then trash a artichoke.
Trash or composting? Come on.
You get to compost an artichoke. You might be able to like pass cards to other people or like swap cards, do a whole bunch of different stuff.
Yeah.
So you're going to get a card from there, and then you can play any of these vegetable cards in your hand. And again, they're mostly, what you're trying to do is just trying to get these artichokes out of your hand. You'd be like, okay, Mike, let's both reveal a card, random card. If we both reveal an artichoke, we both get to compost that artichoke. Stuff like that. And then at the end of your turn, you're drawing back up to 5, and you're like, God, I drew 4 in one artichoke. Dang it. And so you're like, and it's really fun. It comes in a little artichoke tin. I generally am against tins, but this one is really cute.
That one's amazing.
And here's it. It's simple. It's easy. It kind of goes into like point salad kind of like level of game where you can teach it to anyone. It's super cute art. And I honestly think it's a really, really fun game. I think it's absolutely a blast to play. And Abandoned Artichokes is just a good time. And it's just silly fun. I don't know. It's just great. I love it. I love it.
Hey, there's
my number 76. It's amazing.
It's amazing. My number 76 is Tidal Blade's Heroes of the Reef. This game it's kind of been a roller coaster for us. We kind of were way up on it, then kind of down, and now we're back with it again. Tidal Blades is a big old splashy worker placement and dice chucking, kind of one of those Euro Amerithrash blended games.
Yes, it is very much
More on the Amerithrash side, but it blends a lot of Euro mechanisms like bumping these dials and kind of increasing your stats and stuff like that. It's a really fun, amazing world that this game inhabits. There's now 3 games, one coming still.
Yeah.
They're set in the world of, is it Navi, is it? Or
Navi, yeah, something like that.
I'm probably saying that wrong, apologies. Where basically we're all these kind of fish, aquatic people, and we are, in this game, you're the title, like you're training to be a Tidal Blade. They're kind of these like revered heroes, and you're doing like American Gladiator stuff. You're doing like stunts and challenges to like prove your worth. Yeah. And get your stats up so you can hopefully become a Tidal Blade, because these Tidal Blades once upon a time fought these great monsters, and they were all kind of sucked into the fold, and we kind of honor them with these games and these trials and stuff. So what you're going to be doing on turns is you're going to be going to a worker placement spot that'll give you maybe some dice to use, which are kind of how you deal with these challenges. You might get some resources. You might be able to buy a card from a market and things like that. You might race your little jet ski around. And then if you have a challenge card that's based on the island that you're on, you can attempt a challenge. And that's basically going to give you certain things that you want to roll, certain types of dice faces, which are like focus and resilience. They correspond to the 4 stats you have on your player board. If you succeed in that challenge, or even if you don't, you will bump up the tracks for every kind of successful roll that you had within that challenge. And then those dice are kind of exhausted, and they're going to go over to your exhaust side, and you hope to refresh them later and use them again. So it's really fun to work on those challenges and bump up your skills, because you can only carry so many dice into a challenge, but if you increase your, I think, focus, then you can start carrying more dice into a challenge. So it's like, okay, it gets a little bit easier, you can start doing a little bit more on a challenge or on a roll. There's these monsters, those kind of monsters from the fold that were there are starting to come back, so you can go up and fight those monsters and get a bunch of benefits from that. However, any dice that you use in there are going to get lost. And that's where, for us, when we finally got the game after backing it, that we were a little like, oh,
we didn't really like it at first.
It's a hard balance to manage the dice that you have, because if you go to a monster, you lose them all, and at first it's like, this is way too hard to build back up. And then with subsequent plays, we've been able to manage our dice a little bit better, and those dice level up. There's kind of a tech tree with the dice in terms of they get more and more specialized.
You learn how to work
types
the
of dice
game
spaces
better,
But it does reward multiple plays, but it is, you kind of have to play multiple plays to really get into how to use your resources, because it's kind of tough. It's a little bit tight. The resources are a bit tight. But it's just a game that like is buoyed absolutely by the production. It's just bonkers level. Yeah, there's a dice tray that's this like rock arena where the Chronosium, where you're battling and stuff and doing things.
It's so silly.
It's just silly, but it's really fun to play with. So Tidal Blades, I think once we got over that hump and started to learn how to work with the systems, I was like, you know what, this is actually a really fun, robust game. It's not just a gimmick, and we've really enjoyed it. So yeah, I really like Tidal Blades a lot.
Yeah. All right, that was our number 76s, yeah?
Yeah.
All right, let's get to 75. Quarter of the way done, sorry.
Quarter of the way.
Quarter of the way done. Did you cut
Quarter
off
of the
before?
way. It's okay. Well, I was just so excited because I'm sticking with Druid City games.
Ooh.
This is Wonderland's War.
Wow.
75 is
Okay.
Wonderland's War.
Back to back.
Yeah, just so it goes. Wonderland's War is the kind of latest game that's out and stuff now from Druid City, or amongst them. I guess Tidal Blades Banner Festival is slightly newer. Wonderland's War is a big old production. Druid City don't mess around. Druid City doesn't mess around. Big old production set in the world of Alice in Wonderland, where everyone's going a little bit crazy and they're starting to war over the different parts of Wonderland. They're all trying to take over for themselves. And so in this game, you're going to play through 3 rounds, where in the first half, you're going to go through a tea party, a lovely tea party. And you are going to basically be drafting types of chips. There's these different chips, these allied chips, that are all going to have different powers. And one thing that's really fun is, kind of like Quacks of Quedlinburg, depending on which set of cards you use for each ally, they'll have a slightly different ability. They'll be similar. They'll all be kind of like a style, but they'll have a lot of variability. But you don't have to change out the actual chits
which
themselves.
Is sweet.
So you're going to get some chits. You're going to put some supporters into the various areas of the map, which will give you, basically, it'll be easier to stick into a battle and stuff. And so you're kind of investing in, like, I really want to win this battle because in round 2, this battle's worth 10 points. And I want to, like, really make sure I get through and be the victor of that area. So you're going to go through that kind of tea party where you're recruiting cards, getting chits and stuff to kind of mitigate the bag of craziness that you have. And then when we go into the second half of the phase, we're going to go kind of area to area. There's 5 areas, and you're going to have battles. Basically, anyone who has presence there and has at least some supporters there are going to throw down this battle, and then you're going to start drawing chits out of that bag, kind of Quacks of Quedlinburg style, and you're going to start revealing, and you're going to be adding strength based on what you pull out. There's madness chips, which will destroy your supporters in that area. So if you ever lose all your supporters, you get knocked out of that battle, and you kind of go bust.
Don't want that happen.
And you can choose to kind of resign if you want and stuff. So it's to kind of push your luck. It's just all you're pulling stuff out of a bag and hoping that the right things come out that allow you to win this battle. And there's that question of, like, I pulled a lot of my good chits out. You're still way ahead of me in this battle. Maybe I hang it up here because, like, you only get to rest so often to get those chits back in your bag, and you're like, I have more fights coming. So there's, like, a lot of interesting decisions to make there. But ultimately, it's a silly kind of push your luck game. You have Wonderlandians that you can recruit that might give you chits to use, or like little fantastic minis that go out into the areas on the board and stuff. There's a lot of fun stuff, and it's ultimately just pull stuff out of a bag and hope that you win game. really fun with insane production. Like Tidal Blades was like great, and then you see this and you're like, they somehow outdid themselves.
They always do.
Crazy.
They always do. Yeah,
it's really fun though.
One of Those Wars is super good. It's
really
super
cool.
fun. Yeah,
quite a production.
All right, that's your number 75?
That's 75.
My number 75 is a game that's been around for us for a while, and I still think it's one of the most fun and interesting tile selection mechanics, and this is Quadropolis.
Oh, yeah.
Quadropolis is a game by Days of Wonder, and it has a city building game, a pretty simple city building game where you have your grid and you're drafting these tiles and you're putting them in your grid, trying to build a city, and you want it to make sense. You know, you want certain things next to other things, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's got this really interesting drafting mechanism that I still see no one ever really use again. I don't entirely know why.
Yeah.
But essentially you have a grid in the middle of the table that has all the tiles on it, and then you have these architects, and these architects
little arrows.
have little arrows, and they have essentially a different value on them. So 1, 2, 3, or 4. And so you'll put it with the arrow pointing towards the grid somewhere in the main board. And so if I put it right here and it's a 2, I'm then gonna go 2 tiles in, and that's the tile I'm gonna get. If I wanna get this tile over here, I can put my 4 and go 1, 2, 3, 4, or I can put my 2 over on this side or something like that. You can basically, you're putting the architects on the outside of this board to get the tiles that you want, but you can't put architects on top of the other architects, so you do get kind of boxed out a little bit. And then the interesting is on your board where you're putting these tiles, you have to follow again the number of your architect.
Yeah.
So you have 4 columns and 4 rows. And so if I use my 4, I have to put it into the 4th column or the 4th row.
Right.
So it's like this puzzle you have to think of in your mind, because like, okay, I need...
It's not just about what tile you want.
Yeah, it's like,
so where do you want to go?
a park, and I need a park to be here, and this is either in my 2nd column or my 3rd row. That means I have to use either a 2 or a 3. Okay, I only have my 2 left, so is there a park that I can reach with my 2? And there's like this really interesting spatial puzzle that you have to think about, where you're thinking in kind of like 2 dimensions at once, because you're thinking about your board here and the board out there, and then what you need. And it's very interesting. And then so you have different normal city building stuff. You have residential buildings, which you actually can build multiple on top of each other. So if you're building, if you use a 3, you can build this residential building in the 3rd row, the 3rd column, or on the 3rd floor somewhere.
Right, so it goes next level. Yeah, you're like, oh,
and
my
so
God.
you have like residential buildings, and then you have like parks, and the parks want to be next to certain things. You have like harbors, and harbors all want to be in a
big
line.
Yeah, nice and organized.
You have industrial buildings, which want to be next to harbors or next to stores. Stores, you have these little, really great little meeples.
They're like
these like translucent,
oh, they're so nice.
translucent meeples, and you want to have
meeples
in the stores. But you also need these meeples to be on these different tiles, because if you're at a harbor, you need to have a meeple on there, because someone's got to be working at that harbor.
Certain things need energy, which is the other type of thing, and you got to power up.
You got to power up your buildings and stuff like that. And so you can, and the cool thing about the resources, you can move them wherever you want. So at the end of the game,
you only commit at the end.
Yeah, at the end of the game, you're kind of putting everything down, and you might not have enough to power all your buildings. And it just works. It's ultimately a pretty simple game, despite it sounding kind of complex, and it goes over really, really well, and it just feels very, very different. It's a city building game, does a lot of city building stuff like adjacency and such, but it just feels different. It's just built different. It's great. The production value is great because it's Days of Wonder. The art's great. It's just really, really fun. I like it. And again, it's like, I mean, it came out a while ago at this point, so it's not like, why is no one talking about this game? It's just not a new game, but it's just really, really, really good. I love Quadropolis. I think it's a game we'll probably keep forever, basically. Yeah, it really is for us.
Especially with the advanced version, which just changes up things slightly. It's like, you're good
It
to
just
go
makes
forever.
it so good. Yeah, Quadropolis is absolutely outstanding. It's so much fun. It's my number 75, quarter of the way through. Let's keep going. My number 74 is a game I've been jonesing to play recently, and that is Crown of Amara. Crown of Amara by Pegasus Spiel. Our friend Crook got us this game.
It's dry, y'all. I ain't gonna lie.
It's just like dry like a bucket of sand
Dry
in a windstorm.
and delicious.
It's just like, oh my gosh. It's just like, it's so good. But it's very, very dry. But this is a game, it's a very interesting game. This is a game where you're, what's the theme?
Medieval times, Europe.
The
Stuff.
theme is Europe.
Nobles.
nobles in Europe and stuff. That's what you're trying to. I guess you're trying to.
It's a pants builder. It's a pants.
You're building pants. Basically, but the game is built on 2 different rondels. There's a rondel that's out in the countryside, and you'll have a little counselor out there, and you're gonna be going around that rondel getting supplies. There's like wheat, there's stone, there's wood, and then there is fabric, or as we always call them, if there's ever fabric in the game, they are specifically pants. So you're also getting pants. And then on the other side, the other rondel is you're in the city.
Yeah.
And there's like 4
usually
different...
spending those resources.
That's what you're doing, spending those resources. And so you're getting your resources on this rondel and then spending on this one. And you have a little board, and you're putting these cards in the little board. And those cards, depending if you put it in the first spot, it has a little 1 boot at the top of it. And that basically means you get to move one of your counselors 1 space around the rondel, and you get to activate wherever they land. The second spot has 2 boots. The third spot has 3 boots. And so on your turn, you're going to place a card into one of those slots. So you'll get to move however much boots is there. And then you'll also get to do whatever's on the card. And the card might be another boot, which means you get to move again. Or you can get resources, or you can exchange resources. Essentially give you a little bit of an action you get to do. And then you also get to do the action of wherever your counselor lands. Now again, if you go to the thing, you have 2 boots, you're moving one of your counselors twice. You can't like move them both.
Yeah, right.
And then you get to activate that one. So it's this really tough balance, and the resources are really, really tight in the game. And then over in the city, you're turning those resources to do stuff. You can go over here and get like books at the library. You're turning in these ones over here to go up this track. And essentially what you're doing is you have 2 different tracks you're going up of with scoring. You have a citizens track and you have a building track. And so on the city side, that's what you're doing. You're turning in these resources to go up those 2 different tracks.
2 different scoring tracks, yeah.
Exactly, 2 different scoring tracks. And at the end of the game, whatever you're lower of the 2, that's the one you're going to score.
Does that classic thing, which is always so
intriguing.
So much intrigue.
Yes,
yeah.
Because you have to do both. And so it's like this mix of like, okay, how am I going to get my resource to do, okay, and then I can do this. I can turn them here, I can move my citizen. Problem is my citizen is way higher than my building. So now I really have to focus on doing my buildings now. And it's really, really interesting. There's also these cards around the board that you can get. They'll give you like special powers. Sometimes they're one-offs. Sometimes it's something you can use multiple times.
They're awesome, yeah.
And then there's also a module you can play with, which essentially has like an event deck. And the event deck is never really bad, but essentially it'll change each round slightly.
Highly recommend that.
It's just so much fun. It just works so well.
Yeah.
You're just moving around these 2 rondels. Playing the cards is super interesting. And then you're also getting rings for...
Well, you got to kiss the ring, and that's how you're getting your nobility.
You're turning these rings,
rank.
and you can become like a baron, and then a count, and then a duke, or whatever, and stuff like that. And that's just going to be points, essentially. But it's really, really fun. It's dry as a bucket of sand, but it's got like Dennis Lohausen art, so it actually looks really nice. It looks great.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It looks really nice. Like, it's just there's no theme.
It couldn't be more like classically Euro themed.
Yes, exactly.
Like, it's just like, I don't know,
so
classically
Euro.
Stones and trading. And you're like, okay.
You're getting pants, you're turning the pants, you're doing pants stuff.
Crown
of Mara, it's really, really good. It's my 74.
Nice. My number 74 is our kind of favorite version of this Ultimately Gateway game from Praise be, Phil Walker Hardy.
1 per list, praise be.
This is Sushi Roll.
Yeah,
so this is a dice version of Sushi Go or Sushi Go Party. All are great, but we just prefer Sushi Roll because
it's simpler.
It's simpler in certain ways, and also really fun and gives you some intriguing choices.
I wouldn't say it's simpler. It's more intuitive.
Yes, it's less. You can get lost in a card drafting game. We see this often where people make their choices at different paces. And Sushi Go is a simultaneous game where you're looking at your cards, choosing one, and then everyone's supposed to pass, and you get your new cards, and you choose again. The problem is, if someone's really quick, if say 2 people together are really quick, that's where the problem happens, where it's like, cool, make my choice. Oh, here's some cards. Cool, make my choice over here and move. And at some point, inevitably, something gets messed up, and then people have different amounts of cards all of a sudden.
Every time.
And there's no way to track it back. So we always get frustrated with that, especially with Sushi Go. It's a very gateway type game, and trying to keep that all mitigated is this whole thing. So Sushi Roll does the same thing. It's a set collection game just like Sushi Go or Sushi Go Party. But now you're rolling these dice out that will give you different dice faces, and you still want to collect like 2 tempura. So you get 2 dice that show tempura on there, you'll get like points, and they go on your little menu, which is adorable, and it shows you how everything scores, so it keeps it all nice and neat. Nothing to remember. It's all laid out right there in front of you. And the main thing that's cool is you roll out these dice, and they go on these like little sushi boat, little conveyor belts.
Yep.
And then the main thing that they change is you now go in turn order, and you choose a die to place on your thing. The one thing that's really cool is if you're doing a card game, you don't have any information about what person over there might have or what's available to you. But now I can see over there that there's a bunch of the pink dice. Okay, there's a bunch of the puddings out. So it's like, okay, those dice are going to continually get rolled all around, but I know what is possible.
Yes, you know what's going to be on them. Yeah.
And you can do a couple things on your turn. You can just choose a die that's in front of you. You can re-roll some dice, or you can choose a die from someone else's conveyor belt and switch it with one that's from your conveyor belt. So it's like, I really need that dumpling. Nick's got the dumpling. Okay, I'm going to turn in my little menu token, take that dumpling and stuff. And so it's kind of fun to be able to interact with different players on your turn in that way. And then the fact that the dice stay in front of you and you go in turn order and then pass everything down, you can't get lost. You can't get lost in the same way you can in a Sushi Go, which for us has ruined certain games of it because we get too lost to figure out what happened. And the main reason that this still went out even over a Sushi Go Party is Sushi Go Party is fantastic. It gives you all sorts of cards you can select from, so there's a ton of variety. However, we found in our experience, we're always playing Sushi Go Party with brand new gamers. So what do? We play the same set of cards that's in Sushi Go and none of the others because they're too complicated.
Yeah.
So we never interacted with the rest of the stuff in Sushi Go Party, so it didn't matter that it was in the box. Because you and I are not going to play that game. So Sushi Roll has everything we need. For the people we're going to play it with, it doesn't matter that there's not a variety of dice and stuff like that. It's really fun set collection, and those dice are chunky and adorable. So Sushi Roll for us is like a no-brainer, like the way we're going to go moving forward. Sushi Roll is our favorite of the sushi games.
The sushi universe, it's
really
it's
fun
great.
game.
Sushi Roll is outstanding.
So good, so good. Great production. That's my number 74.
All right, let's get number 73.
Number 73 was mentioned by Nick. I typically have things just slightly higher than he does.
You do.
You mentioned this before. This is a game that has been given a significant aesthetic upgrade.
It sure has.
This is Carpe Diem.
Yes, indeed.
From Steffenfeld. We both obviously like it a similar amount.
Pretty much, yeah.
The thing I really like is that it has some Carcassonne to it, where as you're drafting out tiles, you have to make the landscape make sense. You can't have like a vineyard dead end in a grass. You have to have grass touching grass and the same color building touching the other half of the same color building to complete things and then generate resources and stuff. I appreciate that it's a pretty tight resource game that you can find ways to be like really tricky. So it really rewards kind of that clever play. And now with it being more functional, it's not like the prettiest game of all time, but it does very much, it's clear what's what. And that's a huge upgrade from before. I think you could get like even better with that kind of thing, but at least it's functional now. Carpe Diem is really fun, and the kind of tile laying game, we like tile laying games here, keeps us coming back to Carpe Diem. That's my number 73.
All right, my number 73 is kind of doing two games in a one because they're very similar. This is Fox in the Forest / Fox in the Forest Duet. If I had to pick one, I'd probably pick Fox in the Forest Duet. But this is a two-player trick-taking game, Fox in the Forest, where you are leading with a suit. The other player has to follow suit if they can. Whoever wins that one, they'll take that trick. And then you're good to go. Some of the cards, all the odd cards, will also have some kind of power attached to them. And they do a couple different things.
They might change the trump suit, light or draw more cards.
Yeah, they do a couple different things like that. And so essentially you're trying to win tricks, and but you're not trying to win too many tricks. One thing that's cool about the scoring in Fox in the Forest is you can kind of like force someone to shoot the moon and cost them points. You kind of want to win a certain amount. You definitely want to have more, but you don't want to have too much because then you're greedy. And if you're greedy, then you're actually not going to get nearly as many points or no points.
And then the other player, but if you're greedy, the other player is therefore humble and they score like 6 points.
And they score a ton of points. And so it's like this interesting situation where depending on how many tricks you won, you're going to score points. But you want to win, you can't win too many because you're actually going to give your opponent way more points. So it's very, very interesting. And the Fox in the Forest Duet is a cooperative version of Fox in the Forest. Still two-player game, still playing out two-player trick-taking. Except for in this one, you're in this kind of tiny little forest board. And you have a marker in the middle. And essentially, whoever wins the trick on the cards, there's going to be these little paws. And then if you win the trick, like if I win the trick, we're going to move that marker towards me on this little...
pull it toward your end of the forest.
Indeed, and you're essentially trying to get these like gems off the board. You win if you can get all the gems off the board. And essentially, you're trying to pull it, but if we ever get to the point where we pull it all the way off the board, I believe we lose, or we just lose part of the...
We lose part of the forest, and if we do that, I think 4 times,
which
then
means
we lose.
it makes it smaller, which is hard.
More likely to do that again.
So there's this interesting like there's this interesting tug of war going on, but a cooperative tug of war where you're like, Okay, and one thing that's nice about trick-taking game is like trick-taking games is, I feel like every trick-taking game comes down to like how fun is the unspoken language of the game.
Yes.
Where like, I played this card, that means this. And there's this whole like unspoken language you have to kind of learn when you play trick-taking games. It's why trick-taking games are so fun. And this one too, you're like, I'm gonna play this card. The thing is way over on my side. I'm playing a low card. That means we need you to win, and we need to pull this marker way back onto your side. So there's all this like unspoken language going on as you're playing these cards, trying to essentially pull this thing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, trying to get all these gems. It's very difficult. I don't know if we've ever actually won this game, but I really, really enjoy
we did
it.
One time.
The cool thing about Fox and Force and Fox and Force Duet, they're each just a deck of cards, and so you can both put them both into one box. And then you got the competitive version, you got the cooperative version. They're both great. I do like Fox and Force Duet more if I had to choose, but realistically, they're very much the same game. It's my number 73. They're really good.
Very nice. That's our number 73. Let's hop into 72.
72 is a game that I feel like we evangelize a decent amount, and this is Detective Club. Detective Club is a party game, kind of a big group party game where it's kind of like the game Spyfall if Spyfall wasn't terrible.
If Spyfall was mixed with Dixit.
Yes, it's Spyfall mixed with Dixit. I don't like Spyfall. It's one of my least favorite games ever.
It's a great game that doesn't work.
Yes, it does not work for me, I will say.
Need a couple changes, and Detective Club does that.
Detective Club does that. Well, basically, Detective Club, you are given a hand of cards, and there is a lead detective, whatever they're called, basically, and they're going to have all these pads of paper, and then they are looking at their cards, and they're going to think of a clue that it's going to apply to their cards or whatever, and they're going to write that clue on all but one of the pads of paper. So all of them but one have it, and they're going to shuffle it up, shuffle up, and then deal those out face down. So everyone but one person is going to get this clue. And the clue might be like dolphin, I don't know, because like on one of my cards there's like water with like a whale or something like that, I don't know. Sure. And then the lead detective will then put out one of their cards. And then the next person has to put out one of their cards. Then it goes all the way around, and the lead detective puts out a second one of their cards, second card all the way around. And then the lead detective will reveal what the clue was. And they'll be like, the clue was dolphin. And then every single person has to go around and
explain themselves.
Explain how those cards pointed to dolphin. Keep in mind, everyone but one person knows the clue. So the thing is if you're the person who doesn't know the clue, you are like looking around the board being like, okay, everyone's putting out water.
What's the pattern here?
Everyone's putting out water or maybe some kind of animals. I'm going to put out this like mice on a boat card and kind of go off that. And then the good thing is before you have to explain what your cards mean, the lead
actual answer.
They will tell you the clue. And so you have a way to justify. It's not like Spyfall, I feel like, where a lot of times you're just like guessing in the dark and someone asks you a question like, hey, what's about this location? And you just have absolutely nothing to go off of. So you just have to like hopefully lie. In this case, you can argue, and the thing is, like, if I'm the person,
like, well, mice are like sort of like fairy tale like creatures,
and
like,
there's
they'd encounter dolphins, and dolphins would help them. It's water.
I didn't have a dolphin card, so I put a water card. I obviously know what this is, and the thing is, it's like even though I didn't know the clue, my cards might be better than like Mike's card, who does know the clue, because he had nothing, and so then everyone has to vote on who they think the traitor is, who they think the person without it is, and then you're trying to hide essentially, and the lead detective gets points if they like don't get found, so you want them to be able to kind of like blend in, and it just works. But it works specifically because the person who's the traitor has stuff to go off of. I feel like a lot of like social deduction games, it's just like, hey, how well can you lie? And that's all. This one, you have ways to argue your point, even if you had no idea what was going on the entire time. And sometimes you do get to the point where you're just like, okay, so dolphins, right? So the reason and people just know.
Yeah.
And it's one of those games where you score or you don't score, but it's just really, really fun because so often you know the clue and you look at your cards and you're like, oh God, people are gonna think I'm the traitor because I have absolutely nothing. And it's very, very fun. Detective Club's absolutely outstanding, really great art. It's my number 72.
Our lists are similar, man. Our 70 to 80 is pretty similar because my number 72.
Is it Crown of Mara?
Is Crown of Mara?
I knew. I was like, that's
We're
gonna be
like right here.
This area.
We put a lot of these. I'm so surprised by that.
It's good.
My number 72 is Crown of Mara. As Nick just mentioned, it's the balance between those two tracks is really intriguing. And one thing that's kind of cool is you actually start off the game with a head start on the building track.
Yes.
You might be at like 25 points. And so for like a while, you're like, I don't got to think about building. But eventually your citizen track will just go racing right past
and your building track's like, harder to do, Your
building track is harder to do, and you have to do these buildings and stuff. And there's also these kind of race elements to the city side of the game.
Yes.
Where if I'm the first person to use like one of these actions, there'll be a little dial, and then it ticks down. So the next person that comes in to use that will get a few less bonus points on the citizen track or what have you. So you're kind of racing as well.
A certain amount of pants times whatever's on the dial.
Yeah.
And it starts off at like 5,
valuable.
but then it goes all the way down to 1, and each time it gets used, it goes down kind of thing.
And a lot of things in the city are actually that way, where if you're the first person to get to something, it's going to be a much better deal for you than the last person to get to it. So you're kind of trying to figure out, like, when do I make my investments in these certain areas? And of course, you have to get those resources and things first. And the resources in the game are pretty tight.
Yes, really tight.
They're not that abundant. So you're kind of doing stuff, trying to bake bread and stuff. It's just so Euro.
It's so, it's just the epitome of it.
Yes, but it's so fun. Crown of Amara is a good brain burn if you want one in a fairly smooth package. And there's all these ways you can do it. Like, this makes the game, to me, this makes the game way harder. Play it this way. And I'm like, no, I can't.
I don't want to.
I can't do that. I can't handle it.
It's already hard.
Because normally you play 3 rounds and you get, 6 rounds, you get 3 cards per round. You have 9 cards total. And they're like, oh, do you want to play it? You can have all 9 cards all the time. Like, there's too many choices.
It's too many choices. Yeah, no way.
Maybe someone's stronger than me.
Yeah, because you're limited to what cards you have that round.
Like, no, I can't. I would like to work with the restrictions I have. So that's number 72 is Crown of Amara. Really, really fun. A really unexpected game for us. We didn't know anything about it. Our buddy got it for us, and I was like, "Oh wow, you nailed it!" And he was saying like, "You'll like this kind of game," and they're like, "You're right. That's perfect. It's perfect.
Very good.
That's number 72, Crown of Amara.
All right, let's get to 71. Last one of this list.
Nick, what do we love here on this channel?
Bumping tracks?
Watching birds. You were so
sorry,
close.
I was close.
You were so close.
Bumping tracks. Birds, same thing.
Watching birds, bumping birds.
Is there a difference?
This is Wingspan. Number 71. Wingspan for me. Wingspan is obviously very popular.
A little bit, yeah.
It's got an app. It's on BGA. It's everyone's favorite game. Wingspan is from Elizabeth Hargrave, and of course, Longmire Games, who knows how to make a solid production.
Yeah.
Wingspan is one that, like, especially when it came out,
took the world over.
Took the world over because it was a unique theme. Yeah. It was just uniquely different. We hadn't seen something quite like that before in a game that's a really fun, and I wouldn't say simple, but like
it's accessible. I honestly think it's accessible.
There's fewer moving parts than some other games, which is really nice. So it is accessible engine building game. So in this game, you are taking one of 4 actions on a turn. There's play a bird card. There's activate your forest row and get some food.
Yep.
Activate your little grasslands row and get some eggs, or activate your wetlands row and draw some cards.
Yep.
Those are the actions. That's it. As you play birds out, many of those birds will have this little brown banner on them. And then there's kind of a twofold thing that's nice when you play birds. One, every time you fill a bird, say I'm doing my little forest row, every time you add a bird, the action of the forest row now becomes more strong because for every bird I have out there, when you go to place your cube, you're going to place it to the right of your rightmost played bird. And so at the beginning, I might draw like 1 die from the bird feeder and get 1 resource. But if you get it built up, you might grab 3 dice worth of, so you can get more and more food for the same 1 action.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. And then all those brown banner birds that are in that row will activate. As my cube is on the right, I will move it to the left and activate any brown banners along the way, which might help me get extra food. They can do things like tuck cards, which will be worth points. You might be able to cache a food on a card, which will be worth points. You might do stuff which might give you more eggs. Guess what? Eggs are worth points. And you kind of get to trigger all these bonus effects in addition to the action itself. And that's really the meat of the game.
Yeah.
It's
creating that engine,
crazy combinations with these cards. There's all sorts of different cards. There's obviously 3 expansions now that provide different types of birds, different types of abilities, different types of focuses. There's so many birds on Earth. There's hardly any left. They're mostly pigeons now, various pigeons. I can't wait for the pigeon expansion. So it's just really fun to like have simple actions, but they get stronger and stronger. The more you kind of invest in the wetlands, you get to draw more and more cards. And a lot of the wetland birds will have to do with drawing cards, tucking cards. So you can build I built an engine once where I was just drawing a bajillion cards.
I think that was in our Game House episode of it. Yeah,
I was slamming them under birds. And I had like 50 points from tucked cards. And I was just like,
bonkers.
I'm going all tucked birds.
You can build
crazy
insane
engines.
Yeah, it's insane engines.
And it's really fun, and it's just amazing, beautiful art.
Yeah. It's just cool, and that's the fun to me is like, I just want to build some bonkers engine.
Yes.
I really like that about the game.
And what a cool theme where it's just like you're watching birds. Like, that's very digestible.
Well, now there's tons
very
of bird
sweet.
games. I wonder why.
I wonder
it's because of
why.
Wingspan. Yeah.
I really want to try Wingspan Asia, which is a 1 to 2 player standalone, and you can add it to Wingspan, but you can play it on its own. I'm very curious about that with like the duet board where you're playing a 2-player game. Really want to get that. It's just a fun game.
Yeah, I really want to try that.
It's a really fun game. So that is Wingspan My 71.
Indeed. All right, My 71, the last one on the list, is going to be a game that is been around for a long time. It's one of the first games we got. Still love it. I don't think it's ever going to be. The only way to leave my collection is because I need to buy a new one, and that is Lanterns. Lanterns, the Harvest Festival, is a game that's been around for a while for us. It's just, I find it to be incredibly charming. I find it to be incredibly lovely and wonderful. And this is a game where you are celebrating the end of harvest, and you are putting out these lanterns tiles on a lake. These lake tiles have lanterns on them, rather. And you're putting them out into the ever-growing grid of these lantern tiles. And then you will get whatever color lantern is facing you, you will get that color of lantern. Yeah. Yes. The thing is whatever is facing other people, they're also going to get those cards. So one thing that's nice is like no downtime, because every single turn you're getting cards.
You're engaged with the game always.
And then if you ever match colors of lanterns, like let's say I put it this way, blue is pointed to me, green is pointed this way, but it matches up with another green, I'm also going to get a green as well. So you can match stuff up to get more cards, and then you're going to turn these cards in sets to appease the Emperor as dedication points, which is just points. So it could be like 4 of a kind, or 3 different pairs, or 1 of each of the 7 cards.
Yep.
And then all of those point scoring opportunities are descending. So the top one of the 3 pairs might be like 10, but then the next one is like 8, and then 7, and then 6. And so you want to try and get to these things quicker.
Bit of a race, yeah.
And that's what you're doing. But the whole kind of like crux of the game is getting these cards, but while also trying to not give your opponents what they need to score.
You're like, oh, the only card I don't have is green. Thanks for giving me that. I'm going to turn it into an entire set.
I'm going to get 11 points now. So I generally don't like games where you have to really pay attention to what other people are doing. I just want to focus on my own stuff. I don't want to have to pay attention to what Mike's doing. I want to be able to kind of do my own thing. I like multiplayer solitaire games, but this is one where I really enjoy it because it's pretty easy. You're like, okay, I want to put this tile out.
Yeah.
Okay, Mike has 3 reds. Let's make sure we don't give him a 4th red. And it's kind of like that, but it's really, really good. I just find it to be charming. It's very pretty. It's got best solo art. And this is one of those great, like, end of the evening, just relaxing, and just relax and play some Lanterns. I really, really like it. Lanterns is absolutely outstanding. It's my 71 Mikey.
Boom. Chunk of list done. That is 80 to 71. Well picked on your, obviously having some overlap. I clearly agree with your choices.
We did. I'm curious.
So surprised.
There's obviously going to be a lot of overlap in our lists in general, but I don't think there's to be too much within a 10.
Yeah, that was surprising.
2 is probably going to be the most we ever really do. Is 2, yeah.
We'll see. Maybe when we get to the very 10
we'll
or something.
See, yeah.
But that is it. If you haven't checked out our 191 or 90 to 81, in the description of this video, we'll have links to those lists and stuff. You can see our patrons scrolling by. I just want to say a moment to say thank you to all of our patrons.
Appreciate
Super
you.
cool. One thing you're going to get is when we release our 10 to 1 on that same day on our Patreon, our 100 to 200, or 101 to 200, I should say, are going to release. It's going to be very casual chatting about stuff. That will release on YouTube a little bit later. And then on Patreon only, we're going to talk about our 200 to 300 games.
We did rank our games up to 300.
Yeah, so if you want to see some of those, or just in general bonus content from all of our top 10s, become a patron today. Check out all that goodness. Make sure you support Tabletop Alliance. We really appreciate that.
Please.
That's it for us, I think.
That's going to be it until the next 10. I'm Nick.
I'm Mike.
We're the Brothers Murphy. We'll see you later, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you so much for watching that latest installment of our Top 100. Let's go. We're getting right on into it here. Make sure to check out the other episodes if you haven't already. Make sure to please check out Tabletop Alliance if you got a couple extra bucks or yen or anything, really, kick it their way because they really are a wonderful organization. We want to give a big shout out to our channel sponsors, Lucky Duck Games, Restoration Games, and Board Game Geek, and a big old shout out to Board Game Anonymous, who are sponsoring us for this month right here. Do you have problems with board games? Check out Board Game Anonymous. Do you buy too much? Do you lick too many board games that aren't yours? Check out Board Game Anonymous, 1-800-857-444474447.